silly. How childish. Situations like this are enough to make you wish that biblicist would at least follow the advice found in 1 Corinthians 13:11 of their own book, which says, "When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child, and I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I put childish ways behind me." Unquote. Although mature chronologically, many biblicists have not managed to make the transition intellectually. 40th. Jesus is supposed to be the moral guide for all mankind. But he can't even give mankind consistent advice with respect to how adultery and divorce are to be treated. Mark 10:11 says, "Whoever shall put away his wife and marry another commits adultery against her." And note well that if you get rid of your wife for any reason and marry someone else, you've committed adultery according to Jesus. But in Matthew 19:9 he says, "Whoever shall put away his wife except for fornication and marry another commits adultery." In other words, his teaching in Matthew allows divorce in cases of fornication, while that in Mark does not. On page 200 in the book entitled "The Jew and the Christian Missionary," the Jewish scholar Gerald Siegel summarizes this matter rather well when he says, quote, "Contrary to Matthew's record, which allows only adultery as a reason for divorce, Jesus' words, as recorded in Mark and Luke, do not permit divorce under any circumstances. Paul supports the extremely rigid legalistic declaration as found in Mark and Luke. He also directly attributes legislation to Jesus, which goes beyond the law of divorce as stated in the law of Moses." Unquote, Siegel. In other words, Jesus' teachings on divorce in Mark and Luke is even tougher than the old law's teaching. So again we ask, will the real Jesus please stand up and provide the proper teaching on divorce for all Christians? 41st. One of the most disappointing promises ever made by Jesus is found in Matthew 28:20, where he says, quote, "I am with you always, even unto the end of the world." Unquote. Careful observers have no trouble noting that this is refuted by his comment in Matthew 26:11, which says, "You have the poor always with you, but me you have not always." He further destroyed his perpetual presence by saying in John 7:34, quote, "You shall seek me and not find me, and where I am you cannot come." How is that for fulfilling your commitments and standing by your man? First he says he's with us always, and now you'll seek him in vain. 42nd. Another very bothersome comment by Jesus is found in Mark 13:32, where he says, quote, "But of that day and that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son." Unquote. So the Son doesn't know it either. Yet in John 10:30, he has the guts to say that he and the Father are one. How could he and the Father be one, that is, he be God, when he admits that he doesn't know all? God knows all by definition. He's omniscient. If Jesus doesn't know something, then he's obviously not God. 43rd and lastly, in John 8:15, Jesus ruled out any possibility of him being the judge of mankind by saying, quote, "I judge no man." And in John 12:47 he said, "I came not to judge the world, but to save the world." However, Jesus is to be the supreme judge according to John 5:22, which says, quote, For the Father judges no man, but has committed all judgment unto the Son. And John 9:39, in which Jesus says, quote, For judgment I am come into this world, unquote. So which is it? Is Jesus the judge or isn't he? John 5:27, 5:30, 8:15, and 12:47 show that when Jesus said he came to judge no man, he couldn't have been more dishonest if he had tried. That completes our listing for this session. And in our next and final program in this series, we'll conclude our extensive litany of Jesus' shortcomings. As we mentioned before, Farrell Till in Illinois has a newsletter very similar to ours entitled The Skeptical Review. Farrell's a former fundamentalist minister, and he received the following letter from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Quote, I am a firm believer who has more important things to do in life than to pick the Bible apart. What do you expect to gain from this anyway? If you don't believe it, don't read it. If you don't like what you hear or see on the airways, turn the dial or the switch. You have the option to believe or not. Life is too precious to waste it in being rebellious. I know Christ exists. I had 2 personal experiences some years ago. I shall continue to pray for you, unquote. Farrell said in response, Ho hum, another Christian who's had a personal experience. If I had a penny for every Christian who's had a personal experience with Jesus, I could retire a rich man.